Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is Monday the 1st of September all day. It is Labor Day in the US, so before we go anywhere, we better just flag that there will be reduced market volumes, especially in the US session, reduced liquidity, thin and wispy markets, just like Michael Brown's Barnet. You join... I thought I'd get that in before you could. You join us as always for the morning blast, where myself and Michael will be giving you a preview of any major news as it's Monday over the weekend, preview of today, and obviously as it's Monday, a preview of the week ahead, and hopefully add a bit of value, hopefully give you a laugh, put a smile on your face. If you are quite sensitive, probably tune off now because there'll probably be some swears, etc., etc. But I'll get the legals out the way. Nothing discussed in the Spaces session constitute trading or investment advice from if there's any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Mr. Michael Brown. And obviously there was no football at the weekend, so we don't need to talk about that. What else has happened, Michael? Have you had a good day? Have you had a good weekend?
Yes, not too bad, thank you, Ryan. Very good morning to you. Very good morning to everyone else. Minor panic this morning on my first day back in the office when my card wouldn't unlock the door. But
Oh no!
yeah,
Oh no!
I thought the worst may have happened, but
Yeah, as
thankfully not.
we've all been in that situation where you're like, just tap it, tap it, tap it, tap it. Please
Yeah,
open it. And then when it finally goes green, it's like, oh, they
yeah.
didn't see
Thank
what I
God
did
for
at the
that.
weekend.
And my desk wasn't in a cardboard box either. So yes, all is well in the city of London this morning. Although it is very quiet once again. Obviously, the last of the summer holidays here in the UK.
Indeed, indeed, and obviously, the UK, London, especially being that financial hub of the universe of what it is. We do obviously find that when it is a US holiday, even a European holiday, it is always a little bit quieter in town.
Yes, that is very true indeed. Anyway, let's crack on because we do
Yes,
have
let's.
a few bits and bobs to discuss. Going back to Friday, it was a little bit of a soft day in terms of risk appetite. The S&P down by about 0.6%, and Nasdaq down by about 1.2%. No real obvious catalyst for this, in all honesty. It was though the end of August, so let's just put it down to a bit of month-end rebalancing and
Drink.
move on with our lives. It must be said that markets elsewhere very much did more of the same as, well, really summer came to an end. The FX market continuing to tread water, the Treasury curve continuing to steepen with the 30-year yield rising by 10 basis points on Friday up to 4.93%. And obviously, as Ryan mentioned, Labor Day today, so trade in the cash Treasury complex is closed all day. The biggest move, the most notable move, I should say, continues to come from the precious metals complex, where we see silver trading at $40 an ounce for the first time since 2011. And we see gold this morning trading within 25, $30 of a fresh record high. It looks like bullion's salad days are back once again.
Hey, yeah. Oh, so that's a pun for the purists. My
I was
hat's off to everyone. My hat is truly doffed to anyone that gets that reference.
I'm still. It happened about 6 months ago. I'm still overjoyed. I managed to get that into a Bloomberg article. To be
Yes, I
completely honest with
remember.
you,
Yes, happy days.
away from my Spandau Ballet fan club membership of one, there are other things to discuss this morning. I guess the main headline over the on Friday and also over the weekend was the Federal Appeals Court in the United States ruling that Trump tariffs, or the majority of Trump's tariffs, have been ruled illegal. Now, to put a bit of context around this relates to the Court of International Trade ruling that was made probably 2 or 3 months ago now. And this specifically pertains to tariffs that have been introduced under the IEEPA, which is essentially emergency powers granted to the president to impose measures if he views, or they view, I should say, an emergency situation as taking place. Now, the Trump administration have said, and please don't laugh at this, but they have said that the fact that the US is running such huge trade deficits with other nations, that represents an economic emergency, which gives President Trump the authority to impose tariffs by executive order. Now, that is very, very important because that is what has been challenged in court, whether or not the president has the power to essentially impose tariffs on a whim as a result of this supposed economic emergency. A lower court in New York ruled that he didn't. A federal appeals court have also now ruled that he doesn't have that authority. There are actually three things that need to be borne in mind here. The first is that the tariffs that have been imposed stay in effect. Although this court has ruled that Trump does not have the authority to put them in place, they've also ruled that the tariffs will stay in place as the case proceeds. That brings me on to point number two, which is that the case does proceed. What I mean by proceed is the Trump administration have already said that they are going to send this to the Supreme Court. We await what the Supreme Court says in their ruling, which could be a couple of months away, if not longer. The third thing, and we've discussed this at some length previously, is that there are at least 4 or 5, if not more, other legal constructs by which the Trump administration can impose tariffs at a similar level on countries around the world. We've had a number of these used already. Obviously, we've got the Section 232 tariffs. We've got various other legal statutes that provide the administration with the power to impose tariffs. The difference is that most of those would either require an investigation by the Commerce Department or I should say, approval from Congress. So a lot of people, and frankly, all the usual suspects are running around this morning and over the weekend going, oh, the trade war's over. It's all been ruled illegal. They're going to have to pay back all of these tariffs. Frankly, I'm just going to go out there and say this ruling makes no difference whatsoever. It's going to go to the Supreme Court. And if the Supreme Court say you can't do it under IEEPA, then the Trump administration are just going to put tariffs in place through another means.
Right, so this is exactly what I was thinking, and this is not for the first time. It seems like this is just one of these things that's going on, that the only people that are benefiting from this are the lawyers.
Absolutely.
Like, no one's going to get any, like, Trump's going to still get his tariffs, everyone's still going to be able to get angry with him. The only people winning on this are lawyers, and we see it with the EU and the ECB all the time. Well, sorry, not the ECB, the EU all the time. It's by catering stocks in people that are supplying these kind of meetings and stuff like that, because that's all this. That's the only winner here. What a waste of time.
It is. It is a complete waste of time. It's a complete waste of column inches as well, to be honest with you. But it is nonetheless what is deemed to be, this morning at least, the top story. So I thought I may as well mention it. And sadly, in the vein of talking about lawyers, I need to carry on with news from the US court system because don't get too worried, right? Because we did have news also on Friday of Governor Cook's legal case. Now, you recall, of course, that started last week. Trump attempted to fire Fed Governor Cook as over these allegations of mortgage fraud. There are apparently 3 allegations of mortgage fraud now. Bill Pulte is digging up all sorts of dirt at this moment in time. Lisa Cook appealing, basically saying Trump does not have the authority to fire me for cause over this issue. That ended up in a US court on Friday. The judge in that case did not make any sort of ruling in the case. They have asked both parties, so the federal government and Lisa Cook herself, to submit additional documentation to the court by Tuesday, so tomorrow, and no ruling is expected to take place before then. Again, as with the tariff case, whatever that ruling is, whoever loses is going to appeal. That is pretty much inevitable. So that is going to drag out for a number of weeks, if not months. The interesting thing about it, though, is CNBC reported on Friday that Lisa Cook does still have access to all of her Fed-issued devices, mobile phone, laptop, etc., and also still has access to her office in the Federal Reserve building as well, which I thought was quite interesting. It also raises the prospect that things could get very messy if she is around for the September FOMC decision, which is 3 weeks away, and then it turns out that Trump can indeed fire her. Do we then end up with a president that tries to challenge the rate decision the Fed have made? It's just going to become an absolute shit show if they're not especially careful. Exactly. I'm, again, no legal advisor, but it just seems, frankly, too obvious to just say to Lisa Cook, look, fight your case, but can you just take some administrative leave while you do it? Because otherwise you're, potentially dragging the entire Federal Reserve down with you. But we will see how that one progresses. In terms of other bits and bobs from Friday and over the weekend, we did have a few economic releases on Friday. The core PCE figures coming in bang in line with expectations at 2.9% on a year-on-year basis in July, up from the 2.8% that we saw in June. Of course, that is the Fed's preferred inflation metric, but after Powell,
Drink.
indeed, but after Powell at Jackson Hole, it seems that the Fed's focus is now very much on the employment side of their dual mandate. They will be looking through any tariff-induced price pressures as a one-time shift in the price level. We also have the latest Chicago PMI figures on Friday. Big downside surprise there. The index coming in at 41.5, down from a prior
Big miss. Big miss.
47.1. It is a big miss, although this is one of those data points that's just a bit weird, and every
Shitty.
6 months or so you just get a real outlier either to the up
Yeah.
or the downside, so I wouldn't read too much into it. We also had a downward revision to the University of Michigan's consumer sentiment metric on Friday, that at 58.2 according to the final reading in August, down from a prior 61.7. We also saw 1-year inflation expectations tick
Just on
higher as
that,
well. Go on.
as for a final reading score, but it being such a big shift that you very rarely see that on the final reading score being so far away from the prelims and the so it's worth
Yeah, you
potentially
do.
something worth potentially worth something flagging just because it doesn't happen very often. I'm not saying this like it's a sign that everything's about to fall off, but
Oh, no,
yeah.
absolutely. The only thing I would say on that, and I think it's a valid point, is that actually in keeping with the Chicago PMI, the UMich data is a bit quirky as well. I
Oh
think the
yeah,
sample size is about 500 people. So,
no, absolutely,
a few
it
people
definitely is.
changing their minds can have a big impact on that number.
That's a very fair comment. A very fair comment. It's not like the EU PMIs, like the S&P PMIs that we get going from it. Well, are they M&I now? Whoever it is does the PMIs now, but which are slightly better. Which the final reading is always within. Well, pretty much the final reading is always bang in line. But
Yeah.
when we do see something on a final reading that is a bit squiffy, it shows you something's gone wrong somewhere in the initial feedback.
Indeed. Right, moving on from that, a few other bits and bobs in the tech space. Reports via Bloomberg on Friday that the US is looking to remove waivers that it's given to SK Hynix, Samsung, and Intel. These are waivers relating to sales that they can or can't make to China. Also, sticking with AI and China, according to the Wall Street Journal, citing sources, Alibaba, they have reportedly developed a new chip for AI, which is compatible with various other bits of NVIDIA technology. This new chip is now in testing and is designed for inference, not training. Whatever it's designed for, it's caused an absolutely huge rally in Alibaba shares over the last, on Friday in the ADR, and also today in the domestic Chinese market. China stocks still on an absolute tear, although the usual rule applies that they're only yours until the government decides that they're not
Yeah.
anymore. Sticking in Asia, the Ministry of Finance in Japan on Friday confirming that they did not intervene at all in the Japanese yen in the month of August, pretty much in line with expectations. And why would they intervene? It hasn't moved from the 147 figure for 3 weeks. And last, but by no means least for me this morning, just when you thought things could not get any worse here in the UK from a fiscal perspective, after the black hole continues to deepen and
Oh
news
God.
last
Oh
week that
no.
Torsten Bell is now in charge of coming up with the
Oh no.
budget, Prime Minister Keir Starmer has appointed a new economic advisor, Minouche Shafik, ex-BOE deputy governor, who has been pretty much wrong about almost everything she has ever said on any matter whatsoever, is now running economic policy in number 10. So there's a nice cheery start to the week for us
And
all,
do you know what?
as we watch our taxes
It's
go
like
even higher.
it's like we said on Friday, right? Yeah, we love to have a big old dump on Rachel Reeves, but unfortunately, like she's probably by far the best of a very, very shitty bunch.
Yeah,
And you know what? That shitty bunch has just got a lot shittier. Um,
absolutely.
so save yourselves if you can get out. Get out. Save
Run
yourselves.
like the wind.
Yeah, oh God, what a pile of shit we are in. But anyway, on that bright note, thank you very much, Mr. Michael Brown. I'll read out some of the headlines via Zach. It is a US holiday today, and Zach's had a nice weekend away in Kent, so he's the prelim or his overnight news roundup is a bit slower than usual coming through. So I've got some prelim headlines he's bolted over to me, so I'll read those out before we hand back to you for a little preview on the day. As always, do follow Zach if you don't already if only for his overnight news roundup. Also some Arsenal chat, but we don't talk about Arsenal this week today
No,
because
we
of
don't.
what happened at the weekend. Anyway, trade and tariff news. So obviously Michael's covered most of the major stuff, which was obviously this appeals court ruling. But the Trump administration, we have learned, obviously, the Japanese-US trade talks have been going backwards and forwards with what was a bit of an odd decision last week. Well, it seemed to be odd decision last week with the Japanese minister kind of going back to Japan with seeming no conversations taking place. And it's apparently due to the US has requested that Japan buy more US rice, and that was the big snag that basically unraveled the whole bilateral trade talks, as Tokyo strongly objected to this one condition. So one to keep an eye on there. I did think of some rice puns, but all I could wonder was, is there any grain of truth to this? But
That's
moving
exactly what
swiftly
I was
on.
just going to say, for fuck's
Oh, I knew I could sense it. My Michael pun spider sense was tingling, so I was like, I better just say it for the sake of it. It's like, me when I always try and get row 1A on the plane for the extra leg room. I don't need the leg room. I just don't want anyone else to have the fucking leg room.
sake.
Um, so anyway, right, macro news. Federal Reserve announced on Friday that it finalised new capital levels on the nation's largest banks following the June stress test to take effect on October 1st. Although it added that Morgan Stanley is seeking reconsideration of its upcoming capital level. I can guess by that Morgan Stanley want less capital level because banks don't banks are hardly going to argue for more. US tariffs took a toll on factory activity across Asia, overshadowing a surprisingly upbeat performance in China. That's according to private surveys that were released on Monday via Reuters. China's official manufacturing gauge edged up in August but remained in contraction for the fifth straight month as factory output picked up while market demand stayed subdued. The PMIs rose to 94.4 versus 99.4 versus 99.3, but beneath the expected 99.5. And as a reminder, this is a China official data, so it's probably worse than that. The private gauge of China's manufacturing activity jumped back into expansionary territory in August, rising to a 5-month high. The, quote, rating dog China PMI, people need to rename these, I think,
Well,
rose
that
to
has actually
50.
recently been renamed.
What was this, the Caxin?
Yeah, their sponsorship expired, and it's now Ratings Dog. And well, I can tell you more about that over a beer, not on a Twitter space.
Okay, well, I look forward to that. Speaking of which, beer on Friday. So anyway, the rating dog, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. China PMI rose to 50.5 last month from 49.5 in July. That's according to the data released on Monday. Hedge funds, they've boosted options bets for the yuan, strengthening past 7 versus the dollar. Obviously, that's according to Bloomberg. Sigma China, China's resale home prices fell again in August, even as new home prices edged up. This underscores persistent weakness in crisis-hit property market despite a raft of supportive measures. That's gone to a private survey again, this time the China Index Academy. Japan, their government spending request for next fiscal year will likely set a record for the third consecutive year. That's gone to a draft of the request obtained by Reuters. This obviously highlights the challenge the country is facing in its dire financing situation. Sticking with Japan, Japanese corporate spending on plant and equipment, that's obviously industrial plants, not greenhouse stuff. Equipment climbed to 7.6% in April, June from a year earlier, but the outlook for business investment is clouded as manufacturers' profits slide on the pain caused by US tariffs. Sick in that way in the world, South Korea's export growth slowed sharply in August, with the US bound shipments plunging as President Trump's tariffs weighed on global trade. Exports rose 1.3% year on year versus expected 3.7%. And July it was 5.8. That's according to Wall Street Journal. Spain's manufacturing sector, they're experiencing its fastest growth in nearly a year in August, driven by a sharp rise in output and new orders. Just on this, myself and you, did mention probably about 2 months ago now that Spain seems to be positioning itself to be pretty much like the winner in the EU at the moment, and that really seems to be coming to the fore. So well done, the
Well,
Spanish.
it's the whole
Viva España.
it's a whole reversal of what it was a decade or so ago, wasn't it? I mean, I'm sure you
Well,
recall the pigs. Now the pigs
oh,
seem to be running the farm.
I see what you did there, and I love it. Exactly that, and especially with Germany potentially being more and more shit. I was trying to remember the German word for shit, and I couldn't remember.
And
Um,
France is just
but
fucked.
Yeah, but what I would love to see, and I think one of the Greek men, we've gone off topic a little bit here, but it's always worth talking about it because it's a chance to have a shit on the Germans. But if you remember during the pigs crisis, the German policymakers or German politicians were suggesting that Greece sell some of their small islands to pay back the debt.
Mm.
And obviously Germany has quite a few islands themselves, obviously in the North Sea. And we've seen some Greek ministers say to Germany, well, how about you sell some of your fucking islands from us? Which I particularly liked. But anyway, moving on. ECB's Lagarde said the Federal Reserve losing its independence would pose a serious danger to the world, but Lagarde told Radio Classique in an interview on Monday that President Trump would find it, quote, very difficult, unquote, to take control of the US central bank, citing legal precedents that present the removal of Fed governors.
Lagarde also said in that interview this morning, and I quote here, "I look very carefully at spreads," which is quite a change in her tune from 4 or 5 years ago
Yeah,
when she
hang on.
goes, "It's not our job to close spreads. That's not what we're here for."
Oh, Jesus. The French Prime Minister, they've struck a combative tone in its efforts to gain support for, ahead of the SEP 8th confident vote, while acknowledging that talks with political parties may fail to save his government being ousted. I think it's pretty likely that it's going to be ousted, or at least new elections triggered. Austria's next central bank chief, Martin Kosher, will take office on Monday. Said in an interview on Saturday he does not see himself as a hawk or a dove, but will ensure price stability is central to all European central bank decisions. So another owl on the board. Australian job advertisements were steady in August, highlighting a still resilient labour market amid lower interest rates, while a bounce in retail hiring was expected to persist into coming months. Sticking with Australia, Australian home prices rose in August, driven by increased buyer demand and low levels of advertised stock, property consultant Cotality said on Monday. Moving to geopolitics, Europe is drawing up pretty precise plans, that's the quote, for a multinational troop deployment to Ukraine as part of post-conflict security guarantees that have the backing of US capabilities, and that's gone to von der Leyen. And this has been interesting one because obviously boots on the ground is something we've been told over and over again won't be happening, but let's see. India, they rebutted mounting US pressure to end crude imports from Russia. No surprise there, so one to definitely keep an eye on. And quickly rattle through some equity names. Intel said on Friday that it amended the CHIPS Act funding deal with the US Department of Commerce to remove earlier project milestones and received about 5.6 or 5.7 billion dollars in cash sooner than planned. ChatGPT parent company OpenAI is scouting local partners to set up a data center in India. Tesla, they've lowered price for its Model 3 rear-wheel drive version in China by 3.7%. We've also had some delivery registration numbers from Tesla this morning in Europe, and they are dog shit. I think it's fallen 84% in Sweden, if I remember correctly. Spirit Airlines, they finally filed for bankruptcy protection on Friday for the second time in a year after previous reorganisations failed to put on a firmer financial footing. Just kill that dog. Please just kill that dog, because Spirit Airlines just needs to be taken out to the woodshop. Finally, for me, Equinor, they've planned to support Orsted's rights issue by subscribing to around $939 million of new shares. And that's it from me. Back to you in the studio on this very, very, very quiet US holiday.
Very good, thank you, Ryan. I do hope you haven't tempted fate with that one, but there we are. You are.
No,
You
get
are
down the
correct,
pub.
at least in
Get down
terms
the pub.
of the calendar today. It is, of course, Labor Day, not only in the US, also in Canada as well, for those folk north of the border. The docket is, as a result, pretty barren. We have some final PMI stats out of the Eurozone and UK this morning, and then Eurozone unemployment at 10, and that's pretty much it in terms of today. So I certainly wouldn't expect much by way of market movement. For anyone who is trading, firstly, why? Secondly, do bear in mind that CME equity and rate futures will close at 6 o'clock London time this evening, with the metals and commodity futures close at 7:30 this evening London time. But if you are trying to trade on Labor Day, then give your head a fucking wobble, seriously. Moving into the rest of the week, things are somewhat busier. Tomorrow, We have the latest inflation figures from the Eurozone. Headline CPI, that's seen having held steady at 2% on a year-on-year basis in August. Well, the core figure, that's set to have dipped slightly to 2.2%, down from a prior 2.3. Of course, that comes ahead of the next ECB decision, which is next Thursday, where policymakers are widely expected to hold the deposit rate steady at 2%. Also on Tuesday, we get the latest ISM manufacturing PMI stats out of the States. The headline metric, that's seen rising to 49 from a prior 48, so still in contractionary territory, but at a slower pace. Of course, do keep an eye on the employment component of that ISM manufacturing survey ahead of the US jobs report on Friday. Into Wednesday, we have services PMIs from pretty much everywhere, the latest job openings data from the States, factory orders from the US as well, plus the Fed releasing their beige book of anecdotal economic evidence. Also on Wednesday, a very, very busy slate of central bank speakers, most notably from the BOE. Bank of England Governor Andrew Bailey, as well as external MPC members Taylor and Green and Deputy Governor Lombardelli. They will be testifying to the Treasury Select Committee. Meanwhile, Deputy Governor Breeden will also be speaking separately. Of course, within that mix, you've got a handful that voted for a 25 basis point cut, a handful, well, one that wanted a 50 basis point cut, and a handful that voted for rates to remain unchanged at the prior MPC meeting. So the Bank of England are in an absolute mess, and I would not be expecting their remarks on Wednesday to clear things up at all. Moving into Thursday, we have the ADP employment report. That's out a day later than usual due to the Labour Day holiday today. Of course, I'm sure Ryan and I will debate the accuracy, I should say, of the ADP figures as and when they are released. Also on Thursday, we have the weekly jobless claim stats out of the States, the ISM services PMI metric, which is seen rising to 50.9 from a prior 50.1. Also on Thursday, this week's earnings, well, I was going to say highlight, but it's really the only notable earnings released. That comes after the close on Thursday from Broadcom, and that obviously follows what were a decent set of results for Nvidia last week. And then into Friday, we have the much delayed July retail sales stats out of the UK. They are seen.
Well, we hope
Well,
to
we're
receive
meant to,
those.
yeah. That might be delayed again. We don't know. They are meant to have risen by 0.4% on the month in July, but
But who
God
knows?
only knows. I was actually reading about this last week. Apparently, the ONS, one of the things they're having trouble with is two of the things they're having trouble with,
How long have you
particularly
got?
in terms of retail sales. One is a lot of people buying, pre-owned clothes and things like that on Facebook, whatever. Which obviously, how the hell do you track that?
Okay, right, so basically, right, so what? So TLDR, Facebook Marketplace is ruining UK economic data.
Basically, yes. And the other thing that's ruining UK economic data is millennials, apparently, because there's a
Well, they ruin most things in my experience.
well, indeed, I didn't realise. Apparently, there's a trend now where if you want to buy, a shirt, for
Pegging.
example, God, you'll order that shirt, but you might order it in two different sizes and in three different colours. So you're actually buying 6 shirts, but you only want one, so you send 5 back. And the ONS are having trouble accounting for the returns that are being made. So retail sales could be orders of magnitude lower than they're actually being reported. It's basically a complete
Ah,
shambles. I mean,
that's quite. Oh God, this shows how boring we've become. But that's actually quite, well, to me, quite an interesting element, especially for kind of the clothing metrics and stuff.
yeah,
The fact that that's not being taken into. Oh, that's an interesting one. I like that. Well, the
indeed.
thing is, I know what size I am. It's a kid's large, but
I mean,
so I don't
I
actually
don't
got
quite
it.
understand that one either, to be completely honest. And of course, also on Friday, we get the latest US labour market report. Headline numbers on payrolls seen having risen by 75,000 in August, which would be broadly unchanged from the 73,000 that we saw in July. Of course, do pay very close attention to the revisions to that data. We had that huge 260 odd thousand downward revision last time out. In terms of other areas, that jobs report, average hourly earnings seen rising by 0.3% on the month, unchanged from July. Unemployment, that's set to rise to 4.3% from 4.2, although unemployment unrounded last time out was 4.247%. So we were pretty close to 4.3% anyway. And of course, that jobs report for not only the main events of the week, but also will be key in terms of the framing around that September rate cut from the Fed. Is it going to be a more dovish move, or is it going to be a more hawkish one? Other than that, of course, the legal drama around those court cases that we've alluded to already, that will continue throughout the week, while market participants also pay attention to incoming trade, tariff, and geopolitical headlines as the next 4 or 5 days progresses as well. Although, just to reiterate, I would not be expecting much to happen today with US participants putting their feet up on day 3 of their long weekend.
Exactly that, Mr. Brown. Exactly that. And further to what Michael said, we say it sounds quite joking when we say let's stay away from markets during holidays, but genuinely learn from my experience and learn from many other traders' experience, many of which I can see listening to here that have been around for quite some time. Trading on bank holidays, on major holidays, is never, well, I think if you added up your P&L over all of them, I think you'd be shocked how poor it is. It's always best just to stay out of the game unless you have to. Obviously, some people have to trade, they might be mandated or there might be hedging that they need to do. But if you don't need to trade on a bank holiday, do yourself a favour, look after yourself, take that extra day off, sort yourself out, and then come back when everyone else is back, far fresher. But anyway, Michael, thank you as always for another great show. Zach, thank you so much for the overnight news roundup. And yeah, whatever you're doing today, stay safe. Try and get down into a beer garden if you can, if the sun's shining, and we'll see you all tomorrow. Oh, one quick one. I guess we'll be having to put our heads together about maybe getting the non-farm pint sorted this week. We've not done one for a while. If you're around on Friday, I certainly will be.
I can
Yeah,
be.
let's do
Yeah.
it. Fuck it. It's been a couple of months. Right, non-farm pints on Friday, everyone. Sort yourselves out. But anyway, Michael, have a great day. I'm so glad you got back into the office. Yeah,
So am
we'll
I.
see you all on Monday. Monday? Fuck. We'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Bye.
Bye.